All right, a lot of breaking news coming from the White House and no time to waste. So let's just start with the fact that China said early this morning they will not back down from their tariffs. In fact, they will fight to the end against Trump's tariffs, meaning it's now Trump's move. Will he actually do the retaliatory tariffs that he promised of 50% if China doesn't back down, which would immediately send global markets into even more of a frenzy? And let me remind you, tomorrow, on Wednesday, April 9th, that's when the actual Trump Liberation Day tariffs kick in. Right now, we only see the 10% tariffs in place. We are going to see tariffs as high as 50, 60% kick in tomorrow, which will cause a lot of harm. But even beyond China, I want to talk about the White House coming out with a statement today, basically calling for the extortion of all other countries and our allies, saying, if you pay us money, if you do us favors, maybe you can be exempt from tariffs. And this is something I've been pointing out for a few months now. Yes, tariffs are just bad economics. They are harmful to the economy, but they are also a perfect vehicle for corruption. If a president can use tariffs and say, for example, hypothetically, place tariffs on all countries across the globe, except a few that you're maybe friends with, like Russia and North Korea, you can then have countries do you favors for an exemption, and it's just a perfect way of ruling like a mob boss, literally. You do me a favor, maybe I'll scratch your back in return. Before we jump into that White House statement, let's watch Charlie Kirk getting brutally fact-checked by friend of the show, Pearl Mania. Check this out.
Wait, what was that?
If you make a product in America, you don't actually have to pay the tariff.
Oh, well, that was a big lie, and he knows it's a big lie, and I can prove it using an easy example, this 100% American-made Florida tangerine right here.
This is brilliant. Just watch.
See, Charlie is counting on you not thinking about the fact that, yeah, if something's 100% made in America, that exact item won't get a tariff on it, but the entire supply chain and how it's made and all the materials and all of the other parts of it are going to go up in price, right? Let's take a look at this Florida tangerine, right? It grows on a tree, you pick it off. Why would there be a tax on that? Why would there be a tariff on that? Well, what about the hoses for the irrigation to bring water to this tangerine? What about the tractor that's used as these are put into the back of a tractor and then driven off to the supply area so they can be packaged? What about the bags, the netting that these are put in, right? Is the netting made in America? You know, when you buy tangerines at the grocery store and they have that little plastic netting around it, 10%. It went up at least 10%, the price of just that netting alone. Where's the label made that goes on that netting, Charlie? And then let's go talk about the rest of the supply chain. The truck that took that you needed to go put this tangerine at the grocery store.
And by the way, all of these inputs to create these tangerines will raise in price, and do you think the company is just going to eat that cost or eat that raise in price? No, they're going to pass it off to you, to me.
Every single part of that truck, were they all made in America? Because now if anything goes wrong with that truck, that part's going to need to get replaced, which means maintenance costs are going to go up because that part goes up. So now they're going to go pass that on to the actual seller of the tangerine, who's going to pass it on to the buyer. Once we get to the grocery store itself, are all the light bulbs made in America, Charlie? All those fluorescent light bulbs hanging over everybody's head. What about the shelving units? What about the refrigeration units that are used in the produce section, Charlie? What about all of the other different parts of that building itself of the grocery store? Is there anything that might need to be replaced in the near future that isn't made in America? Because all of them went up at least 10%, because we put a 10% tariff on the entire world at the minimum, and at the maximum, it is percentages that we can't even imagine because they were imagined by ChatGPT as they were handed off to college students that you spent the last 4 years distracting from going into their classes while you stood out in a tent and yelled, "No, it's the wokes and DEI that are causing all these problems, Charlie." And Charlie, I'm even talking about something very simple like a tangerine that's grown right here in Florida. I'm not even getting into anything more complicated like a t-shirt, Charlie, because I know for a fact that your t-shirt costs went up because Turning Point USA, the organization that you run that is funneling billionaire money to make sure that these kids keep voting to lower taxes somewhere along the line and destroy the world and maybe conquer Greenland or some shit, that organization that you run uses Gildan t-shirts. And Gildan t-shirts, the blanks that you then get screen printed, those are not made here in America. Where are your t-shirts made, Charlie? They're made in Latin America and Southeast Asia. So your t-shirt costs have gone up.
Charlie Kirk kind of just got rolled by Pearl Mania. Again, shout out to friend of the show, Pearl Mania. This brings us on to this next clip of Kamala Harris during her campaign going on a bunch of shows and saying, if Trump gets into office, you may see a recession by summer. Just please watch how beautiful this is.
Include the fact that Donald Trump's plans for the economy would accelerate inflation, and invite a recession by the middle of next year.
Increase inflation, and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. Increase inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year.
I'm starting to wonder if my capital would have been safer with Kamala. If maybe Kamala would have had a little bit of a steadier hand and less of an obsession with tariffs. I'm starting to wonder.
A recession on by the middle of next year.
To a recession by the middle of next year. Recession by the middle of next year. Recession by the middle of next year. A recession by the middle of next year. A recession by the middle of next year. A recession by the middle of next year. Recession by the middle of next year.
Two observations. Number one, I miss Kamala. She was so on point. She was absolutely right. She understood the downfalls of tariffs because she's a normal, well-educated human being. But also, if I want to be completely fair, this does kind of remind me of the criticism that her campaign was very, very scripted. Because to be 100% fair, if she just toned down how scripted it was a little bit and just went off the cuff, because she's a cool person. I've seen her be super cool, but we've seen reports now that her advisors were deadly scared, like super scared of her ever going off script. But that's to the side. That is to the side. Before we break down what the White House said, I have one more clip. Please don't hate me, but you guys are going to find this incredibly interesting. Andrew Tate actually disagrees with Trump on tariffs, and his explanation is not bad. I might send this clip to all of my old bros from high school that are vaguely right-wing and don't understand that tariffs are bad, because listen.
North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world, and South Korea is one of the richest countries in the world. Why? The people are the same. Well, the idea behind it is actually quite simple. The North Koreans had an absolute self-sufficiency, and they didn't want to rely on any other country for anything, which sounds quite smart, but it turns out to be a massive hindrance. And the South decided to trade and open up and deal with all other countries. When you trade, means that you spend all of your time focusing on the one thing you are good at. So South Korea became very good at microchips. They didn't need to be good at making clothes. And if they needed clothes, they'd give microchips, the thing they were good at, for the things they were bad at in return. Imagine you wanted to be completely self-sufficient and you had to make your own clothes and grow your...
He's literally explaining economics 101. It's called comparative advantage. If you can delegate something off and someone can do it more efficiently than you, and that leaves you more time to do your core competency more efficiently, then of course you want to do that. I mean, you can apply it to my business. I, for a while, would edit all of my own videos, and I finally got to a point where I was spending so much time editing, even though I was good at it, I was like, hey, what if I get an editor and I have him edit my videos, and then that frees up more time for me to do my main skill, which is being in front of the camera, not doing the editing. It's just basic economics 101. I learned this at, 22 years old, but the president somehow does not know this. Okay, that's enough Andrew Tate. Let's get on to what the White House said today, because I find it kind of scary. Trump's top trade advisor set out a list of requirements for other countries to meet. They can meet any of these requirements and get the tariffs lifted, but there are a few things. First of all, this completely undermines the Trump admin's argument that companies need to reshore manufacturing, because if you're a company, the only way you will spend all of the money and time moving your manufacturing into the United States is if you know the tariffs will stay, 100% stay, for the next 3 decades, forever. You will never want to move your companies here or your plants here if the tariffs will be lifted by an unpredictable president in a year. So when Trump's team tries to say, hey, you can negotiate and get the tariffs lifted, that removes all of their leverage to have people move here. So that argument is gone. But also, let me just read this list. It says, first, other countries can accept tariffs on their exports to the United States without retaliation, providing revenue to the U.S. Treasury to finance public goods provision. Critically, retaliation will exacerbate rather than improve the distribution of burdens and make it even more difficult for us to finance global public goods. Second, they can stop unfair and harmful trading practices by opening their markets and buying more from America. Third, they can boost defense spending and procurement from the U.S., buying more U.S.-made goods and taking strain off our service members and creating jobs here. Fourth, they can invest in and install factories in America. They won't face tariffs if they make their stuff in this country, but what about while they're building those plants for the next 16 months? Will they still face tariffs then? But I'll continue. Fifth, they could simply write checks to Treasury that help us finance global public goods. The fifth one is the one that's key, and then we'll break down the others. In the fifth one, they might as well have just put a PayPal link right there. Like, hey, if you want to write a check to the U.S. Treasury to help us finance global public goods, then you can get tariffs lifted. Is that not a textbook example of quid pro quo corruption? It's like if I were a mob boss and I'm like, hey, I'm going to put a tax on all of the drugs that you sell unless you do me a little bit of favor and you write me a check. It's blatant corruption, right? But even beyond that, let's just go through and break all of these down. First of all, when they say that other countries can accept tariffs on their exports without retaliation, you're basically just saying that the US should be able to levy economic costs with impunity while other countries need to absorb this loss quietly. No country is going to sign on to this because when the Trump admin says, finance global public goods, the Trump admin is the one that's defining global public goods. So what's going to end up happening is the US is going to define that as anything that helps finance American priorities. And then the implication is that other countries are going to be taking a loss to help finance American priorities. It's dumb. No other country will take that. But secondly, with number two, urging other countries to open their markets and buy more from America is on its face a good thing, but it still undercuts the notion of free and fair trade. It's a demand cloaked in the language of fairness, right? You have to buy more from America. And all of the rest of these are just offensive. Trump is literally twisting the arm of our allies for zero reason. Like when they say, on the third one, you can boost defense spending. On its face, that's good. We want our allies in Europe, for example, to boost defense spending. That would be great. But by tying military spending to economic relief from tariffs, we're not saying, hey, you're our ally, please buy our weapons. We're saying we're going to twist your arm. We're not your ally. We're here to twist your arm and bully you until you meet our demands, especially the fifth demand. They could simply write checks or just, I don't know, PayPal us or just give us a little bit of cash, and then we'll lift the tariffs. And that cash will help us finance global public goods, but those global public goods will be defined only by us, unilaterally by us, so we can define that as anything that's good to us. We could build a wall with that revenue. So it's all really odd, corrupt, and maybe we should listen a little bit to Kamala Harris. You know, I was going to say as a joke, maybe we should listen to Andrew Tate on tariffs, but that's not even a funny joke. I'll leave it there. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe. By the way, the Adam Mockler channel was in the top 10 fastest growing political and political adjacent YouTube channels in Q1 of 2025. So, if you want to help me continue beating Charlie Kirk, we even beat Megyn Kelly. Tucker Carlson we beat. We did not beat Joe Rogan. He's still growing fast. But if you want to help us grow faster than Joe Rogan, make sure you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It's all free, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.